Most backyard gardeners are unknowingly wasting 90% of their soil's productive capacity. They space plants wide apart, walk between rows compacting the ground, and wonder why their harvests barely justify the effort. But there's a method that doubles your yield while using half the space, and it has nothing to do with fertilizers or fancy equipment. The problem isn't your soil or your climate. It's that conventional row gardening forces plant roots to spread horizontally when they want to grow vertically. And when roots compete sideways for nutrients instead of diving deep into rich soil, you get weak plants producing mediocre harvests from massive plots that could feed twice as many people. Think about what happens in a traditional garden. Tomato plants space 3 feet apart in rows 4 feet wide. Each plant occupies 12 square feet, but the roots only use the top 6 inches of soil because everything below that is compacted and lifeless. Those wide pathways between rows, completely wasted space that gets walked on, dries out, and grows nothing but weeds. You're essentially gardening on a hard pan with a thin layer of topsoil. Now picture something different. A bed 4 feet wide, any length you want, filled with 2 feet of loose, dark, compost-rich soil so fluffy you can push your entire arm into it. Earthworms moving freely. Roots diving straight down instead of spreading sideways. And because those roots aren't competing horizontally, you can plant vegetables much closer together than you ever thought possible. This is the deep bed method. Not a raised bed filled with purchased soil, but an in-ground system where you create depth through a one-time intensive process that transforms how plants grow. Here's what nobody tells you about plant spacing. The reason traditional gardens use wide spacing isn't because plants need that much room. It's because shallow soil forces roots to spread horizontally, searching for nutrients and water. But give those same plants deep, fertile soil, and the roots go down instead of out. Suddenly you can grow tomatoes 18 inches apart instead of 3 feet, because the roots occupy different vertical zones rather than fighting for the same horizontal territory. The math is straightforward. A tomato plant in a conventional garden occupies 12 square feet. That same plant in a deep bed occupies 2 square feet. You fit 6 times more plants in the same area. But it gets better because you're not just cramming plants together, you're creating cooperation instead of competition. The dense canopy of leaves shades the soil, retains moisture, and suppresses weeds, while roots at different depths access different nutrient layers without interfering with each other. Building a deep bed starts with understanding why 4 feet is the magic width. It's based on human reach. You can access the center from either side without stepping on the growing area. Length doesn't matter, make them as long as your space allows. But that 4-foot width is non-negotiable because the entire system depends on never compacting the soil once it's prepared. The preparation is called double digging, and it's the most labor-intensive thing you'll ever do in your garden, but you only do it once. Remove the top 12 inches of soil from the first section and set it aside. Then loosen the subsoil below with a garden fork to another 12 inches of depth. Move to the next section, remove the topsoil, and place it in the first section on top of the loosened subsoil. Loosen the subsoil in the second section. Continue this pattern until the entire bed is double dug with loose soil 2 feet deep. As you work, incorporate massive amounts of compost and well-rotted manure into both layers. You're aiming for at least 1/3 of the final volume to be organic matter. This isn't just fertilizer. It's the foundation of a living soil ecosystem that will maintain structure and fertility for decades without tilling. Most gardeners quit here because it's genuinely hard work. Your back will hurt. It might take a full day to prepare a 20-foot bed. But here's what they don't realize. You're not just digging a garden bed, you're building permanent infrastructure that will outproduce conventional gardens by a factor of 3 or 4 for the next 30 years. The moment that bed is complete, one rule becomes sacred. Never step on it. A single footstep compacts soil and undoes the work you've done creating that loose, aerated structure. Use boards laid across the bed if you need to reach the center. Always work from the paths on either side. Now comes the part where deep beds reveal their real power, and it has everything to do with how you plant them. Instead of planting in straight rows with wide spacing, you use offset patterns that pack plants together while giving each one what it needs. Picture this. Lettuce normally gets 12 inches of space in traditional rows. In a deep bed, you plant them 8 inches apart in all directions, creating a hexagonal grid where every plant has equal access to soil volume below. The leaves touch at maturity, forming a continuous canopy that blocks sunlight from reaching the soil surface. No light means no weed germination. The bed essentially weeds itself. Root crops work differently, but follow the same principle. Carrots and beets can be broadcast seeded and thinned to 2 inches apart because the roots dive straight down into that loose soil instead of spreading sideways, hunting for nutrients. You're harvesting the same amount of carrots from 4 square feet that would normally require 12. Larger plants need more consideration. Tomatoes, peppers, and brassicas still require room for their canopy, but you can push them closer than conventional wisdom suggests. Plant them in triangular patterns rather than rows. A triangle uses space more efficiently than a grid, and the staggered arrangement ensures air can circulate between plants while maximizing soil usage. What makes this work is understanding you're not cramming plants into inadequate space. You're providing abundant resources in a compact area. Deep, fertile soil gives roots everything they need vertically, eliminating the need for horizontal sprawl. Succession planting transforms from theory into practical reality in deep beds. You can interplant fast-growing crops between slow-growing ones because there's enough soil fertility to support both simultaneously. Plant lettuce between tomato seedlings in spring. By the time the tomatoes grow large enough to shade the ground, you've already harvested the lettuce. Sow radishes between carrot seeds. The radishes mature in 30 days and get pulled before the carrots need the space. This isn't possible in conventional gardens, where soil fertility is marginal and roots compete aggressively for limited resources. Season after season, the soil in deep beds stays loose and friable without any tilling. You never compact it by walking on it, and the constant addition of compost plus organic mulch feeds earthworms and soil organisms that maintain structure underground. When one crop finishes, pull out the spent plants, add a layer of compost, and plant the next crop directly into the existing soil. No digging, no tilling. No disruption to the soil ecosystem you've built. The production numbers reveal why this system changes everything. A single 4x20 foot deep bed produces 100 to 120 pounds of tomatoes per season, or 40 pounds of carrots, without chemical fertilizer. That same yield would require 300 square feet of conventional garden space. Water efficiency improves because deep soil acts as a reservoir. It holds moisture and releases it slowly to roots over time. The dense plant canopy shades the soil surface and prevents evaporation. You might water once per week where traditional gardens need it every other day. In many climates, established deep beds become nearly self-watering through the growing season. Weeding drops from hours per week to minutes because the system suppresses weeds through competition and shade. When plants occupy every square inch of surface area, there's simply no room for weeds to establish. The yield difference is dramatic enough to change your entire relationship with gardening. A small backyard plot suddenly produces more food than you can eat, and you're giving away vegetables to neighbors. A 4x20 foot bed produces what would take 300 square feet to match using conventional methods, and it does it with less water, less weeding, and less overall work once construction is complete. Instead of needing a quarter acre to feed your family, you need a few deep beds totaling maybe 500 square feet, which fits in most suburban backyards with room left over for everything else. Instead of spending every evening maintaining your garden, you spend 20 minutes per week on beds that practically run themselves. Instead of mediocre yields that barely justify the effort, you're harvesting bushels of vegetables from a space smaller than most people's flower gardens. Start today by marking out one 4-foot wide bed. Double dig it properly with massive amounts of compost and plant it densely using spacing that seems impossibly tight until you see the results. Watch that bed outproduce an area 3 times its size planted conventionally. Then build another. Space isn't your limitation. The moment you start growing down instead of out, your garden becomes twice as productive in half the space. The difference between a garden that feeds your family and one that disappoints you year after year comes down to understanding one principle. Plants don't need width, they need depth. Every conventional garden with wide rows and compacted pathways is fighting against plant biology instead of working with it. Deep beds align your effort with how roots actually want to grow, and the results speak for themselves within a single season. You're not adding complexity or buying expensive materials. You're investing one hard day of work to build infrastructure that produces for decades. That first deep bed you construct will teach you more about productive gardening than years of struggling with conventional rows ever could. The soil stays loose, the plants thrive, and the harvest proves what's possible when you stop wasting 90% of your growing space. This isn't theory. Mark out 4 feet, dig deep, plant tight, and watch what happens. That's mathematics, not marketing.